revenge with Lyra.
My family texted, "We need space from you. Please don't reach out anymore at all." My aunt packed them up. I simply replied, "Of course, I'll cancel my direct deposits first thing." By midnight, the family, "My name is Natalie Carter, I'm 27. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. What happens when the ones you've carried decide to cut the rope, only to realize the rope was keeping them afloat?" The message lit up my phone just after dinner. I reread it twice, the words cold, final, clinical. "We need space. Don't reach out anymore." For a second, the sting hit. The daughter they'd leaned on, erased in a few sentences. But then clarity swept in, fast and sharp. Because they had forgotten one detail. Every month, without fanfare, I had sent money, transfers labeled utilities, groceries, mortgage top-up. They never asked politely, they demanded. And I gave, because that's what family does. At least, that's what I told myself. So when the text came, I didn't beg. I didn't cry. I typed my reply with hands steady as stone. "Of course, I'll cancel my direct deposits first thing." And I hit send. The silence after was louder than any argument we'd ever had. By midnight, the family group chat, usually a mess of requests, complaints, and last-minute needs, had exploded. My aunt had already helped them pack, carting boxes into her minivan, whispering promises that they'd be fine without me. But deep down, I knew. They had built their comfort on my quiet sacrifice. And without it, midnight wasn't going to feel like freedom. It was going to feel like free fall. I watched the screen glow, one furious message after another, their panic dripping between the lines. And I smiled, realizing something I should have learned years ago. When you stop feeding the hand that slaps you, it finally feels its own hunger. Mom's sobs filled the line, but they weren't the tears I'd spent my life waiting for. They weren't about me, they were about the image. "How this makes us look." Her voice shook, not with regret for forgetting me, but with panic that the world had noticed. "Elena," she said, "she always got my name wrong when she was flustered. Your father didn't mean it. You're twisting this online. Just take it down." I kept my tone even. "I didn't twist anything. I wrote the truth. That's all." Her silence was a blade. By noon, the caption had spread beyond my circle. Friends left comments that felt like warm hands on my shoulders. "Rachel has carried everyone for years. Shame on them for forgetting. Your worth isn't defined by their silence." My phone buzzed nonstop with support, the validation I had begged for at that same dinner table now arriving from people who actually saw me. But then came the backlash. A text from my older brother. "Take it down. You're humiliating us. Family issues stay private." I stared at the words, laughed once, sharp and bitter, and replied, "So does gratitude. But you didn't keep that private." No response. For years, they had wrapped themselves in secrecy, shielding every slight and insult with family privacy. Now, their armor had cracked with one caption, and the world peered inside. That evening, I sat by my window, city lights flickering, and scrolled through the photo again. Their faces glowing under the chandelier, glasses lifted high, and me, blurred at the edge, unmentioned, invisible. Except now, invisibility had turned into visibility. Their omission had become my spotlight, and for the first time, they weren't in control of the narrative. I was. By Monday, the caption had grown legs. An aunt called, her voice hushed but sharp. "Rachel, sweetheart, why would you humiliate your parents like this? Everyone's talking. You know how hard they try." I pressed my forehead against the cool glass of my window, staring down at the streetlights. "They try for everyone else. Not me," she sighed, the way people do when they want you to shrink back into silence. "Family matters should stay in the family." I almost laughed. That line again. Privacy had always been their shield, a way to erase my feelings while protecting their image. But privacy hadn't fed me when I skipped meals to pay rent. Privacy hadn't clapped for me at my art show. Privacy hadn't remembered my name in a Thanksgiving toast. When I hung up, I opened my phone. Dozens more messages waited. Colleagues who admired my work, friends who reminded me of my worth, even acquaintances who barely knew me but understood the sting of being invisible. One message stopped me cold. Sometimes the strongest person at the table is the one no one mentions. But they know. Trust me, they know. I let the words sink in. Maybe they did know. Maybe my parents' silence wasn't forgetfulness. Maybe it was willful. They had always elevated my siblings, praising their safe careers and conventional lives. My work didn't fit their mold, so they erased me. That night, Dad finally called.
His voice was low, rough.
Rachel, you need to apologize to your mother. She hasn't slept since your post. You've embarrassed us in front of everyone. I gripped the phone tight, my jaw clenched.
No, Dad.
You embarrassed yourselves. I just refused to cover it up. The silence that followed was heavier than his words. For the first time, he had no quick retort, no lecture. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. The silence from my father should have ended the call. But instead, he muttered, almost to himself, "You don't understand what you've done." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling.
No, Dad.
I finally understand exactly what I've done. I told the truth. By midweek, the caption wasn't just a post. It was a mirror. Friends kept resharing it with their own stories, being forgotten, dismissed, erased by the people meant to lift them. My words had become larger than me, and my family hated that. Mom left a string of voicemails, each one a mix of guilt and threat. Rachel, if you loved us, you'd take it down. Rachel, this is tearing the family apart. Rachel, you've made me look like a bad mother. I played them one by one, each message confirming the truth I had known all along. It wasn't about me, it never was. It was about how they looked, how their carefully polished image was cracking. On Thursday, my younger sister sent a text. "Congrats on being the drama queen again. You love attention, don't you?" I typed slowly, carefully.
No.
I love respect. They gave you speeches. They gave me silence. No reply came. That evening, I walked past my parents' house. Through the curtains, I could see them pacing, arguing, their voices muffled but heated. For once, they weren't united. For once, I had disrupted their perfect narrative. I pulled out my phone and snapped another photo, not of them, but of myself, standing in the glow of a streetlight, independent and unashamed. I posted it with a new caption. Respect isn't a favor. It's a right. And when it's withheld, silence becomes a weapon. The likes and comments rolled in again, a flood of validation stronger than any Thanksgiving toast could offer. And as the night deepened, I felt something shift. For years, I had begged to be seen. Now, their refusal to see me had made me visible to everyone else. They couldn't erase me anymore. I had carved my name into the silence. By the weekend, I could feel the cracks widening in our family's perfect facade. Relatives who rarely spoke to me began sending quiet messages. "I saw your post, Rachel. You're right. They've always overlooked you." Others reached out with cautious sympathy, tiptoeing between truth and loyalty. The ones who stayed silent told me the most. Silence meant agreement, even if they didn't have the courage to say it aloud. Meanwhile, Mom's calls shifted from sobbing to sharpness. "Do you realize how selfish you sound? Your siblings are furious. You've humiliated us in front of everyone." Her words were fire meant to burn me back into silence. But instead, I felt stronger. "I didn't humiliate you," I replied flatly. "I just refused to carry your erasure quietly." That night, I sat at my desk and opened the photo again. My siblings, glowing under the chandelier, raising glasses to speeches in their honor. My absence at the table now screamed louder than their names ever could. I thought of every year before, when I had cooked dishes, set the table, cleaned in silence while their accomplishments were paraded. How many times had I told myself, next year will be different? But it never was. Thanksgiving wasn't a dinner. It was a stage. And I was never invited to step into the light. This year, I hadn't just stepped off the stage. I had burned it down. The caption, the photo, the ripple of attention, it wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my narrative, the one they had silenced year after year. And as the support kept pouring in, I realized something beautiful. I didn't need their speeches. I had found my own voice, and it was louder than applause. By the sixth day, the tension had grown unbearable for them. Dad left a terse voicemail this time, stripped of his usual authority. "Rachel, just come home. We'll talk about it at the table." Enough of this nonsense. The irony stung. He wanted me back at the same table where I had been invisible, the same table where every speech had skipped me like I wasn't even breathing. Now, suddenly, my absence mattered. But I wasn't rushing back to fill a chair. Instead, I poured my energy into work. My boss had seen the viral caption, not the family drama, just the strength in my words, and offered me a new project lead. My colleagues congratulated me, their respect evident, their support genuine. Recognition from strangers and coworkers felt richer than any crumb my parents had withheld. That evening, Mom sent a final text. "Rachel, this is breaking us. Take it down, please. For your father. For me." I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back, "It's not the caption that broke us. It's every year you pretended I wasn't worthy." Her reply never came. Later that night, I sat on my balcony, city lights flickering like scattered stars, and thought about the strange beauty of it all. One photo, one caption. Years of silence cracked open like a fault line. My family had wanted me invisible, but their refusal to see me had amplified my voice. I pulled out my journal and wrote a single sentence across the page. "Silence has teeth." And I realized maybe this wasn't just about Thanksgiving. Maybe it was about every room I'd been overlooked in, every conversation I'd been excluded from, every speech I had waited for that never came. For the first time, I didn't feel like the forgotten sibling. I felt like the truth teller. And truth, once spoken, doesn't return quietly to the shadows. The following Sunday, the whispers turned into open fractures. At church, neighbors approached my parents, their voices low, curious. "We saw Rachel's post. Is everything all right?" My mom forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Dad's jaw stayed tight. They hated it, being questioned, being seen as less than perfect. Meanwhile, my siblings seethed. My brother sent me a string of texts. "You've ruined Thanksgiving for everyone. You thrive on drama. Congrats." My sister chimed in too. "You could have just talked to us. Instead, you embarrassed the family." I didn't reply, because they weren't angry that I lied. They were angry that I told the truth where people could hear it. That afternoon, I walked through a gallery downtown, staring at paintings bathed in light. My own work hung in the corner, small, understated, but mine. A stranger paused in front of it, studying it carefully, then whispered, "This one feels honest." It was enough. More than any speech could ever give me. By evening, another message came from Dad. Short, clipped. "Rachel, if you want back in this family, you'll need to apologize." Apologize. The word sat bitter in my chest. Apologize for existing? For noticing my erasure? For finally giving voice to years of silence? I typed my reply slowly, each word deliberate. I won't apologize for telling the truth. Respect isn't conditional. Either you see me or you don't, but I won't disappear again. No response. Only the sound of my own heartbeat steady and sure. I looked at the photo once more, that Thanksgiving table, the glow of laughter, their glasses raised without me. And I realized it wasn't just a memory of exclusion. It was proof of transformation. They had tried to erase me, but I had written myself back into the story. And this time, the spotlight wasn't theirs to control. Thanksgiving had passed, but the echoes lingered. My parents' house, once a stage for polished speeches, now sat under a cloud of whispers they couldn't silence. My siblings carried the weight of questions from friends and neighbors, their perfect image tarnished by the very omission they thought would keep me small. And me? I walked lighter. In my apartment, the walls glowed with the warmth of new beginnings, canvases leaning against corners, projects stacked neatly, proof of a life I had built without their approval. For once, I didn't crave a toast in my honor. I had learned that respect built on conditions isn't respect at all. One evening, I lit a candle, the flame flickering across the photo that started it all. Their faces frozen mid-laughter, their glasses raised, my absence captured forever. A scar and a victory, all in one frame. My phone buzzed with another message from Mom. This one wasn't anger, or denial, or begging. Just 5 words. We never meant to hurt you. I stared at it for a long time. Maybe they hadn't meant to. Maybe they had. But intention no longer mattered. What mattered was that I had stopped waiting for their recognition. I set the phone aside and whispered to myself, I see me. And that's enough. Outside, the city shimmered, unbothered, endless. I stepped onto my balcony, the wind brushing against my skin, carrying away the weight of years I had carried alone. Thanksgiving had taught me something my parents never could. Invisibility is only possible if you agree to stay unseen. And I had chosen differently. I had turned silence into speech, absence into presence,